So first, rest your mind in a very open and expansive state, very effortless and relaxed. And then give rise to compassion for all sentient beings who fill space and have served as our mother for countless lifetimes. And understand now that they are suffering because of their karma, their actions. And those actions are the cause of the poisons of the mind, the afflictions. And those afflictions motivate those actions. And they are experienced as various forms of suffering, the suffering that comes from the loss of happiness because of impermanence, the suffering of pain, and the all-pervasive suffering of samsara. That anywhere in samsara we wind up, anywhere in samsara that we go, is of the nature of suffering. Just like water is wet by nature, our mind, when it's conditioned, is suffering by nature. And feeling moved by the compassion that yearns for all these mother beings to be free of that state, that whole system, that whole self-perpetuating system of the cycle of life, the cycle of unawakened life. And moved by compassion for all those mother beings, and determine that you will attain a state that is free of conditioning, with all the powers, with all the knowledge, the wisdom, all the love and compassion of the awakened mind, whereby we will be able to actually benefit in a relative short-term way, but particularly in a long-term way by guiding others, directing others, alluring others, bringing others to the path of their own awakening through that compassionate action, through that compassionate action. And in order to fulfill that, the yearning to benefit beings by attaining awakening, now we are involved in the path to awakening, particularly that path of the Mahayana approach, the Mahayana path of the Mahayana path that is the union of wisdom and compassion, the union of absolute wisdom and skillful means, inseparable. As it said, first, through wisdom, free your own mind, and then through compassion, free the minds of others. And so with that as our goal, then establish that as you listen to the teachings of the conduct of a bodhisattva. If you are following in the sequence, in the path that that Shantideva is presenting, the way of the bodhisattva or the conduct or the activity of a bodhisattva, then first we come to an understanding of the great benefits of bodhicitta. Then we purify and clarify our mind and bring into our mind, kind of fill our mind with kind of positive energy and capacity. And that capacity is to be able to take the vow of bodhicitta, the vow that's been taken by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the past. And it's the vow that all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas must take in the future. And so by taking that vow, we become part of that lineage of awakening. And then having taken that vow, now we are in the section of the text that presents meditations, reflections, and contemplations on how to not lose that intention, how not to lose that bodhicitta, that very new and fragile and susceptible bodhicitta. And particularly this, as a beginner bodhisattva, then it's understood that our bodhicitta will become forgotten, lost, and kind of disregarded, minimalized. And so to prevent that from occurring, then the section that we are in now, this second section, is the section that prevents or antidotes that. And in the chapter on carefulness and introspection, which includes mindfulness, then we are given these step-by-step contemplations, meditations, things to become familiar with, thoughts to become familiar with, that will prevent that loss of bodhicitta. And as we've learned, the loss of bodhicitta, because our bodhicitta is very fragile and undeveloped, almost like a small infant, like a newborn, has all the potential, but is very fragile, then what we are learning are not what we're learning principally are what the actual threat to bodhicitta is. And through the carefulness, mindfulness, and introspection, alertness, introspection or alertness, through these three faculties, through, let's say, through growing and developing and strengthening and becoming familiar with these three qualities that mind has the capacity to grow, we more and more distance ourselves from those factors that will harm our bodhicitta, will cause us to forget bodhicitta. That is to say, the target of our attention is on our afflictions, our mental afflictions. We can, as it's described in this and the previous chapter on carefulness, we can, which is the paramita of discipline. These two chapters combined are the bodhisattva discipline. Generosity was covered in the previous section. In the chapter on discipline, he's not giving a list of rules and a list of kind of what discipline is so much, which we can find. Definitely it's there in other sources, but what he's presenting, Shantideva is presenting, are how to practice discipline, what to be careful of, what to be mindful of, what to be alert to. Not bodhicitta, but to what will interfere with bodhicitta. We need to, of course, learn the precepts of bodhicitta. Learn what is aspiration bodhicitta. This wish to attain enlightenment is very simple, actually. Just to always maintain all day, all night, the wish, the aspiration, the yearning to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. That's a very simple thing, but 1 second we have it, and then what happens 2 seconds later? It's gone. Why is it gone? Because of some aspect of our habit, our habit that we are so used to, that has become so naturalized that we don't think of it as something extra. We don't think it as an invasion. We actually think of it as a friend, like when the Chinese moved into Tibet. They moved in very slowly, and they were very friendly and paid what they were paid, the price of things, gave big tips. They did all this. Everybody got very used to them, and more and more and more and more. And it took a long time for the Tibetans to realize that they've been invaded. And by that time, there were all these allies that the Chinese had developed and so forth amongst the population. And so it was very difficult to tell the difference. And so in the same way, our kleshas, our mental afflictions, have become so naturalized in our mind that we just assume that they represent us and that they are in our best interests. Or even if we know that they're not in our best interests because of the immediate feedback that we get from the outside, or our own feelings that we get from the inside, we still somehow forgive our kleshas. We hesitate to actually identify them as being a problem. And so we need to learn the names of these kleshas first, so that when they come up, we will recognize them as being an enemy, as Shantideva talked about. And so it's good to have, as I said, if we were going to have a test on these teachings, one of the questions would be, what are the root kleshas, the 3 root kleshas? What are the 5 root kleshas? And particularly, what are the 20 secondary kleshas? Because those are the ones that are very part of our personality, almost. I don't know if I can say that, but they are so naturalized that they slip under the radar time and time again. So developing mindfulness and introspection is of course, that's a very Buddhist practice. But here in the practice of bodhicitta, our mindfulness and alertness is in regards to, is this aspiration bodhicitta present, or has it been displaced by our kleshas, our mental afflictions? And when we recognize that it has, then we either need to arouse our bodhicitta to displace those afflictions, or if they've sort of grown under our own lack of introspection, lack of mindfulness, then we need to directly know how to antidote them. So the conduct of Bodhisattva, even though it involves avoiding negative actions, cultivating or performing virtuous actions, and the third discipline of the Bodhisattva conduct of benefiting sentient beings, those are not considered to be like a, I don't know, like putting on a really tight jacket, you know, and then not being able to move. When we cultivate this carefulness, mindfulness, and introspection, then our conduct will come from our own mind, which is the origin of our actions. When bodhicitta is present, then we can't, let's put it this way, when bodhicitta is present, all of our actions will be virtuous. And when bodhicitta is not there, then it's questionable. We're in free fall. So I can't say that if bodhicitta is not present, then everything we do is negative. I'm not saying, I don't know if I've read that. I don't know if I could say that, because we do have some momentum towards virtue and some interest in virtue, but it is corruptible and forgettable, very forgettable. So we can't rely on our sort of karmic disposition. We can't rely on our momentum, our sort of polite, our momentum in being polite, or in being kind of what we think of as like an upstanding good person. That's impermanent. Okay, so this is the context of this teaching on mindfulness and introspection or alertness. And also being alertness also is the training in being sort of panoramic in our scope, mentally panoramic, so that we should all, like the ideal or the goal of, if we were if we're 100% mindful and introspective or alert, then we are always aware of our body, speech, and mind. But that's what these terms refer to, as being aware of our body, speech, and mind. And we should do it, or as I mentioned earlier, or as I mentioned how Paltra Rinpoche taught it, was to always be acutely aware or intensely aware of body, speech, and mind, with a very relaxed mind. I think his order was that we should have a very relaxed mind that has the qualities of mindfulness and alertness, mindfulness and introspection. it's a form of knowing. Okay. So again, as you review and read these sections, as in the commentary, how they outline the different sections, these clusters of verses refers to this teaching. So it's really in the going back, reviewing, and then carrying out those as meditation. And Alter Rinpoche's style of teaching this text, he would teach like some verses, 5, 10 verses, or whatever the topic was, and then his students would go off into the forest and meditate on them for days or weeks, and then come back and then get the next section of verses, 1 or 2 or 5 verses, whatever the case may be. And so I'm trying to also cluster these verses as discrete topics for us to reflect on or meditate or contemplate and take literally. And if we do these in kind of a step-by-step manner, then the whole context of it begins to make sense from the point of view of the underlying power of bodhicitta. So we've already gone over the sections that explain how to practice avoiding negative actions, how and why to avoid negative actions, and how and why to engage in virtuous actions. And now on verse, let's see, 84. 84 to 90 are verses relating to the discipline, the bodhisattva discipline of the paramita of the discipline of working for the benefit of others, working for the benefit of sentient beings. 84. Therefore, understand this well, okay, and always labor for the benefit of beings. So understand this well. This means avoiding negative actions, performing virtuous actions, then practice the actions of benefiting sentient beings. There's a sequence of that. In some commentaries to the paramitas, they say, well, until you reach a certain level of a bodhisattva, then you're really just engaging in giving up negative actions and practicing virtue. You can't really engage in the discipline of benefiting beings until you reach a certain stage of bodhicitta, maturation. See, for us, I think, and it's taught, not I think, but in the sutras and in the great masters of bodhicitta of the past, for beginners like us, the main training that we should get our teeth into is aspiration bodhicitta, the aspiration to awaken to complete unsurpassable enlightenment. Keep that in our mind as our driving force, our preoccupation. Whatever our occupation is fine, but our preoccupation should be this aspiration to attain awakening. When that becomes naturalized, then when we begin the practice of the paramitas, that becomes the ground of that practice. Then that practice becomes the support for the engaging in the engaging bodhicitta. But just practicing generosity, just practicing discipline, just practicing meditation is not, by definition, not necessarily the practice of the paramitas. The practice of paramitas is driven by there's only the presence of this bodhicitta is what do you say, is characteristic, or what defines whether or not something is the conduct of bodhisattva, the paramita. And of course, paramita means transcendent. It means having reached the other shore, literally. So one reaches the other shore of generosity, the first paramita, when one perfects generosity. And that is the first bodhisattva level of Rapgava, means joyful. First bodhisattva level is that's where this generosity is perfected, and it's perfected again by the infusion or the merging of emptiness, of practicing generosity beyond the three spheres of the one who's giving, the act of giving, and the recipient, all being free of self-identity. Like I say, the bodhisattva engages in the paramitas, engages or benefits sentient beings, or engages in the conduct of benefiting sentient beings by recognizing that sentient beings are an illusion. And of course, that is the development of projecting your own realization of your self as being a mere illusion and having no substantial existence or reality. So then through aspiration bodhicitta, then beginning to engage in the discipline of avoiding negative actions is the practice of the bodhisattva at the outset. When we practice avoiding negative actions, of course that regards not just our behavior and our speech, those seven negative actions, but also the mind, negative actions of mind, which are having a harmful, hateful attitude, or an attitude, a mind that wants to harm, a mind that is envious, that wants what's others, or covetousness, and a mind that's steeped in wrong views, that's absorbed in wrong views, which means not understanding the truth of karma, or not having faith in karma. Not seeing how, not believing that everything arises through causes and conditions. Believing that things have an intrinsic reality. These are wrong views. So these mental sources of non-virtue are part of avoiding negative actions. When we give up, when we recognize that we have a habit of lying, exaggerating, and we see what we recognize, okay, that is a negative action, I must avoid that. And we begin to see how often we are involved in deceiving others about ourselves, about each other, and so forth. And then we see that the source of that is to have something to do with protecting ourselves, or or shining the light on ourselves, making us a big deal, or something to do with self-grasping. And so by avoiding negative speech and negative behavior, we are led, we're guided back to mind as the source, and self-clinging. That mind that is self-clinging becomes the source. And then from that self-clinging arises all of the mental afflictions that causes so much problems. So that's why first the Buddha taught, give up negative actions completely. And by that, it gets back to developing mindfulness, which is necessary to give up negative actions completely, not just become a well-behaved person who doesn't go around hitting people, or someone that always speaks in a good way, but someone who's gone in to uproot through this carefulness, alertness, and mindfulness, and uproots the source, which is self-clinging. Okay, so understand this well, and always labor for the benefit of beings, to from the point of view of how the paramitas, what the paramitas refer to, what the practice of transcending discipline refers to. Here, benefiting beings means having no self-interest, be free of self-interest. And so for that to be how we act, then we must go through the rigors of giving up negative actions, renouncing the kleshas, and then practicing virtue, the opposite of negative actions, harmful actions. Then the enrichment of virtue, the qualities of virtue begin to mature as the ability to actually benefit others without self-interest. So understand that there is this order or this sequence. So we don't want to be trying to practice things that are in such a way, or practice things that are beyond our reach, because our habits are so strong in the other direction. We just become kind of exhausted and discouraged. By trying to be a good bodhisattva. When really we should just be focusing on giving up our kleshas in every instance, through mindfulness and alertness, mindfulness and introspection. And of course, in the training of bodhicitta training, we give up negative actions with the motivation to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. It's not just we give up negative actions to become a better person. We give up negative actions with this aspiration to attain enlightenment as a motivation. And then it goes on to say, the compassionate one, the Buddha, far-sightedly permits, in other words, through his wisdom of the future, the far-reaching outcomes of actions, has permitted bodhisattvas to engage in what otherwise would be a negative action. He has permitted, or it's appropriate, considered appropriate for a bodhisattva to engage in some lesser negative action because of some greater, in order to to engage in a lesser negative action so that a greater suffering is avoided. Similarly, not enjoying, like in Dharma practice, there's many instances where on the Bodhisattva path we forego enjoying lesser pleasures for the sake of greater pleasures down the road. Or what we would think of as long-lasting happiness. For instance, lying. I remember this was the first, like, our Rinpoche taught how this particular point, how if someone ran in to where you were, terror-stricken, saying someone's after me to kill me. I think it was a woman came in, and my husband is going to beat me. And so when the husband comes in and asks, "Did you see my wife?" You lie to him and tell him that she went that way, not the way that you saw her run, but another way. And so then he goes that way. And in some sense, of course, to protect the victim or the intended victim, but also particularly to protect the perpetrator, what is it, the one who's carrying out the action. In the example also that's often cited in the commentaries, you see in Words of My Perfect Teacher and other texts, is that two friends, one friend, Black Spear, who was the captain of a boat, and his friend, I forget his name, but they were both worked on the boat. And one friend said, or the captain, Black Spear, said that he was going to kill all these bodhisattvas that were on the boat going over the water. And first, his friend who knew him tried to dissuade him and talk him out of it. But for whatever his motivation was, it was a very dark side, a very negative mind, and he would not be dissuaded from killing out these bodhisattvas. And so having an understanding of what the consequences of this action would be for his friend, having some kind of wisdom, he killed him. And saved him from experiencing a very terrible consequence over a long period of time. And so this is how Shantideva is saying here that, according from, of course, this is everything that we're studying here is from the sutras. That in the sutras it taught how the Buddha allowed lesser violations of what otherwise would be the seven negative actions of body and speech, for the sake of avoiding a much greater suffering. Of course, this requires the Bodhisattva to be on a level that has that kind of vision of the future, that kind of wisdom that understands karma and the outcomes of actions. It's also, this line is qualified by this term called perverted compassion, where we do things because we don't see the future, and we do things out of compassion that are harmful to a being, another being, but not really understanding whether or not what the outcomes will be for that being. In some commentaries, it says how this that these going against, like practicing what otherwise would be, or what are non-virtuous actions, on the bodhisattva level, out of compassion. True compassion is the sphere of activity of those who are on the bodhisattva levels, who have attained the qualities of the first bodhisattva level, which means that there's been a recognition and an ongoing abiding in the true nature of mind, and the compassion that arises from that. And for that individual, then they are not discouraged from clinging to these non-virtuous actions of body and speech. But never should we don't give up the mental, we don't indulge in mental afflictions, just those of body and speech. First, you ask yourself, what is my motivation in carrying out this lie or this slander or this stealing or this negative action, body, speech, and what is my motivation? What is it based on? Is it based on some kind of wisdom of understanding the future? And then you ask yourself, is it really, truly only for the benefit of others? Or am I getting some relief out of it? Am I getting some satisfaction out of it? Is my doing it because for my pain or for my happiness or whatever? So the second question, is it truly for the benefit of the other one? And then thirdly, you ask yourself, can I actually do it? So consider these points. Then comes 85. Now, okay, these next 5 or 6 verses have to do with drawing others to the Dharma. And the first way we do it is by offering material things to others as a way of using interdependence to connect others with their own awakening. He says here, eat only what is needful. Of course, this harkens back to the previous verses on we're quite thorough, I think, in how we are to regard our body as the vehicle for accomplishing enlightenment and to treat it accordingly. And not to go overboard and not to go, what's underboard? What's the opposite? Not to be, not to practice unnecessary austerities. Eat what's needful and share with those who have embraced the discipline, with those who are defenseless or have fallen into evil states. So these are actually 3 specific categories of ones that you practice generosity towards when it comes to eating, because that, whether or not we are ordinary people or bodhisattvas or yogins or renunciates or monks or nuns, whatever, we eat. We eat to sustain our bodies. And so that becomes a very universal or shared experience for practitioners and non-practitioners. So as one who is engaged in cultivating this aspiration bodhicitta, then when you eat, you should divide because for monks, they specifically divide up, you carry little plates and you take your portion and you put one portion in one small plate, one portion in another small plate, and then you keep another portion. And I'm not sure how, in the days of old, how monks were fed, but probably it wasn't self-serve. It wasn't like a smorgasbord where you go in and just load your plate up and then give half of that and then go back on for seconds. Somehow I don't think that's how it was. It was just everybody gets a scoop. Then it becomes a practice. Okay, this is what I'm going to eat to sustain myself. And for people like us, then we should offer the first portion before we eat. We should offer it to the three jewels, the three roots, to your chosen deity, your yidam, with some sort of prayer. Or you can even bless your food in a sort of a more tantric manner with the three syllables of blessing it and feeling that the blessings of enlightened form, speech, and mind transform your food into wisdom nectar or some, but even to just make a prayer to the three jewels, recognizing the qualities of the Buddha, of the Dharma, and the Sangha, and then offering it to them, and then eating, and then saving a third portion aside for that you offer to those who are like hungry ghosts or demons, those beings that we don't necessarily see, but that are reported to be suffering from great hunger and thirst and can only sort of extract the essence and be satisfied by food that is intentionally offered to them. And so you have that intention. So share with those who have embraced the discipline here means, of course, means those who are practitioners and monks and nuns. And this not only has to do with food, but any offering you make. And it's by offering to those who on this level who have embraced the discipline, or who are bodhisattvas, or who are gurus and yogis, and people who are sincere practitioners, by offering to them things that will support their practice or their body, to food here it's talking about, or clothing. Then you are accumulating virtue. You are accumulating merit that will move you towards your own awakening. So when you offer to those who are referred to here as embracing the discipline, then you're the one who should feel thankful to them for their practice, for their wisdom, for their compassion, for their being, thankful to them for being an object, a field for merit. It's called a field for merit. So anything you contribute to a field of merit, just like a a fertile piece of land, any seed you put into it will thrive. So any offering you make to a field of merit will grow in as your merit, your virtue. It's not appropriate for someone who receives an offering that's made to them to be thankful to you as the donor. That's backwards, as it says in the text. You're the one who's thankful. When you make an offering, you should say thank you to the one that you're giving it to. The one, like it's the Buddha, when people offered food to the Buddha or offered a shelter or robes or whatever they offered to the Buddha always said, well done. I dedicate your merit to the enlightenment of all beings. You did well by offering this, and I rejoice and dedicate the merit that you've accumulated. So that one. And then, of course, for ordinary practitioners and who are involved in that being a recipient, then there's a huge burden on them to carry out what is expected of them and to live up to being a field of merit. Otherwise, they are incurring a great karmic debt, a great non-virtue. It's like when when we offer butter lamps, then as soon as we offer butter lamps and go through the rigorous discipline of going online and plowing through all of the things we have to do, clicking and filling in, all these things, the discipline of that and the generosity of that, time and energy and intelligence, everything comes to bear on just making a simple offering of a butter lamp. And when we do that, as soon as we click the donate button and it's successful, then we've accumulated merit. It's up to the recipients, the Gompa, as a collective, whether it's Rigzamling or Amrita or other Dharma centers or sending money to Asia, it's up to them. Then now the burden is on them to carry that out in the best way they can in order to not incur the obscuration. It's called a kordrip, means it's an obscuration of misusing money that was offered, or misusing any material that is offered. So I'm always harping on that at Dharma centers and Rigzamling and so forth. We can't waste supplies. We can't waste material or money, or we can't let our butter lamps go out without relighting them or refilling them to fulfill the order, the donation for those. And so also in that regard, I'm going to make sure that, having reviewed this verse here, I know Rinpoche always talked about this also, that when we send these automatic replies, that actually we feel that it's a good system. This system of sending sending dues and sending offerings and so forth through the web and so forth. But our replies should not be thank you or we're so grateful. That should not be the approach. Like the donors are grateful, and we are bound to dedicate their merit. Okay, we'll move on to the next one here. We'll be here all night. We'll share with those who have embraced the discipline, those who are defenseless. So we should make offerings and contribute to food banks for people, or wheels, Meals on Wheels. I always give my parents, when they got old, they really valued Meals on Wheels. So I always send it to Meals on Wheels. So these kind of things, those who are old or sick or homeless people don't depend on government social services for the homeless. They like direct help, So, or those who have fallen into evil states. And in our, as I mentioned just before, those hungry ghosts, the pretas, the tormented spirits, demons, negative demons, and so forth, all these elemental forces, nagas and so forth, we should make offerings to them by some mantras, or just from our heart. You who only can be sustained or only be satisfied by offering food to you, this I offer to you. And then you just toss it out, and animals eat, and then also offer to animals and those in the lower states of suffering. And if you know how to practice offering sur, like a burnt offering, then that falls into this category of offering a burnt offering of the scent, offering the scent. And that also includes offering to the beings in the bardo who are satisfied and rejoice in food that has a scent, has a smell. And particularly then the sur offering is offered to bardo beings and other tormented beings, more tormented beings that are nourished through the faculty of smell. When you are here, it mentions in the commentary how, like for monks or those yogins who are supported by donations or by given food, then you should pray for the donor, that your benefactor, that the virtue of the benefactor brings them to accomplish enlightenment. And then just in general, we should also, as we eat, we should dedicate, or we should make the aspiration, we should turn our aspiration bodhicitta to those who contributed to the food turning up in our plate, or on our plate, or in our bowl. All those who prepared it, all those who the truck drivers, or however the food got to us, all those beings that were involved in that, the growers, the insects, all the animals, all these beings, the fungi that contributed to the soil nutrition, that caused the plants to have value, all those we should dedicate the food and the virtue of eating it, and dedicate your life to bring them to a state of enlightenment. Disciplined, defenseless, and those who have fallen into the lower realms. Okay. Then it says, give everything except the 3 robes of religion. So then this is a restriction that we give everything, but not here directed specifically to monks. There's the outer robe and the inner robe, and then the patched robes, then we shouldn't give those away. These are the sort of sign or symbol of purity. And so we should always hold those symbols of purity. If you're a Mahayana, like practicing on the sutra path of the Bodhisattva, then you shouldn't give away like the sutra you read. Like if you read the Bodhicharyavatara as your practice, then you shouldn't give that away. You buy another copy and give away. You shouldn't give your copy away, or you shouldn't give away your daily recitation texts, for instance. And if you're a Mantrayana person, Ngakpa, then you shouldn't give away your Bell and Dorje, or sometimes there's an ordination for Mantrayana where you're given the robe, the white robes of a Ngakpa, and you shouldn't give those robes away. So this is the give everything away except these. Then 86 says, the body used to practice sacred teaching should not be harmed in meaningless pursuits. So we shouldn't harm it in what's meaningless, which is to either be self-indulgent or extra pampering, or this austerities, middle path, the middle way. By acting thus, that is according to the conduct of the bodhicitta, by acting thus according to the precepts of the bodhicitta, the wishes of all beings will swiftly and completely be attained. So for beginner bodhisattvas, then our actions should be this bodhicitta. We should train our minds in aspiration bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta. And we should train in developing keener heedfulness and mindfulness and introspection. And we should train in regarding our body and maintaining our body for that purpose. That's part of our training here. It's mentioned here many times. So that's how we should regard our body, as a mental training. And we should practice generosity and discipline primarily. And we should practice dedicating the merit of all of the above and making aspirations for one's own attainment, and particularly for the attainment of all sentient beings, kind of going forward. And so these are the practices. By acting thus, the wishes of all beings will swiftly and completely be attained if we carry out these activities which are appropriate for us. Then we will swiftly attain what will be beneficial for all beings. If we do things that way outstrip our capacity and are way over our head, then we'll just get fatigued and frustrated. Then 87, they should not give up their bodies whose compassionate thoughts are not yet pure, meaning that those who are not yet on these bodhisattva levels, level of joy and above, who have that very confidence in emptiness. But let them surrender when, both now and in their future lives, great benefit is thereby attained. So right now, we don't have the wisdom eye to really know that by giving your life or limb for the sake of others will have a beneficial result. So until we have that kind of vision, like in Shakyamuni Buddha's previous life, when he, out of compassion and this wisdom, gave his body to the hungry tigress, then he had that ability to do that without feeling pain. His wisdom and compassion transcended the act of that profound generosity of giving the most precious thing we have, which is our body. So until that time, don't consider it. I remember hearing when I was in India many years ago, Chinese people used to go before the statue of the Buddha in Sarnath, where Buddha first spoke. Not Bodhicharyavatara, Sarnath. It became a kind of a custom in the Chinese Buddhists that they would stand there and burn their finger down as an offering. They'd keep lighting it as an offering. I heard that it was somebody did that. Oh, somebody was out at Sarnath doing that again, and you would hear that as a theme of these Chinese people. In the Tibetan history, well, I don't have so much time. One of the reasons why all of the great masters came to Tibet was through the wisdom, this foresight of one. He was a king of Ngari, was Lama Padma. He was captured and put in prison. Just a short synopsis of it, just as an example from the Tibetan. He was put in prison, and they said, "Okay, you have two choices: we'll kill you, or you renounce the 3 jewels, or you provide the equivalent weight in gold, your weight." They weighed him, and that much gold. And so I definitely will not renounce the 3 jewels. And so then they sent a message, and they gathered all the gold they could find in Ngari. Ngari is this one, the Western Central District of Tibet. And they sent the gold to ransom, basically ransom his weight in gold. And they were short. They said probably like one like the weight of his head, I think, or something like that. But they couldn't find any more gold, and so he said he didn't want them to go back. He said, "No, don't give the gold. It's short to ransom me. They're not going to take it. So take that gold back to Ngari and take it to India and use it as an offering use that gold as an offering to the pundits and masters in India, and make that as an offering for them to come to Tibet and bring the teachings to Tibet." And that's what happened. And he was killed, and he gave that out of his foresight of the benefit of Dharma and his faith in the power of the 3 jewels and his compassion. 88, do not teach the Dharma. Okay, this section, so that previous had to do with material offerings, from just morsels of food up to your body, all these verses. Now, 88 is offering the Dharma, how you benefit beings or bring beings to the Dharma by offering teachings. Do not teach Dharma to the disrespectful. Doing that puts them in a difficult position. It endangers people to teach Dharma to those that are have no respect for it. It's dangerous for them. And the blessings of the Dharma decline. Blessings means how it benefits the mind of the listener. And so if someone is disrespectful, it won't bless them, and it actually will maybe make it worse. They'll have a more negative attitude towards the Dharma. And then to those, don't teach the Dharma to those who, though not sick, wrap cloths around their heads, who carry weapons, staffs, parasols, to those who are with covered heads. So in other words, don't teach those people should show signs of respect in order to receive the teachings properly. And we shouldn't teach Dharma in a casual way, like while you're cooking food or while you're driving. But don't teach, like if you're with a Lama in a car, it's very inappropriate to ask them Dharma questions. You don't teach Dharma in a casual way, but teach Dharma by understanding, like the 5 excellences is a place, the excellent place, the excellent time, the excellent teacher, the excellent teaching, and the excellent retinue. So be the excellent retinue and honor all these, bring forth all these other excellent situations. Then proportion to that, in proportion to that, then the Dharma will be of benefit. To those upon the lower paths, do not explain the vast and the deep. Meaning, if you go way over somebody's head, they won't get it. They'll have doubts. They won't know what you're talking about, and they'll get confused or they'll get scared. It's too much. So if somebody is on a level of the Shravakayana, like they just want to hear about teachings on ethics, things like that, you don't start teaching about the empty nature of negative actions and so forth. You teach according to their acuity, their ability, their capacity. Nor tutor women unaccompanied by men. Well, this specifically refers to nuns and monks who teach, who have the role of a teacher. Like nuns shouldn't just teach men, and monks shouldn't just teach women. There should be mixed groups, in other words. That's just, these are, this is to, we can't assume that there'll be some passion or something about from the monk or the nun side. The problem is that other people will slander that monk or nun, assuming that the monk has the same kind of a mind that they do. Ordinary people who are not training to notice the kleshas and antidote them. So that's the idea. Every Dharma, high or low, in other words, no matter how high, no matter how profound it is, it's the most profound Dharma or the most basic entry-level Dharma, a qualified teacher should teach those with equal reverence, not exclusively be somebody who, I only teach Mahayana, or I only teach great perfection. I'm just a great perfection teacher. I don't fuss about those lesser teachings on morality and so, or I only teach this. A qualified teacher should be able to understand the capacity of their students and teach them properly according to their ability, and not be fussy about what their favorite teaching is. They should expound with equal reverence for all the Dharma. All Dharma leads to awakening. It's like food. All food nourishes, but you don't give the same food to newborns. You don't give as you do to adults. You don't give, and so forth. Old people who are sick, people who are this and that. Different things. It's like food. Dharma is like food, and it has to be given according to people's capacity. And a teacher shouldn't into the very negative karma of rejecting Dharma. Sometimes in the tradition, it doesn't seem to be catching on like fire in the West, but there is this tradition of debate where you try to force, through logic and reasoning and through the principles of the debate, you force someone to abandon their view, what their view is. And the purpose of that, this is only to remove lesser views that obstruct their understanding or their coming to appreciate or realize the most profound view of emptiness. And so doesn't fall under the category of rejecting the Dharma when you are engaged in a particular dialogue that's purpose, that's geared to removing and elevating your view. Okay, just as a footnote to that point. 90, those suited to the teachings of the great scope, that is, in those situations where there are this exceptional situation where the most profound teachings are given. Here it says they should not be introduced to lesser paths. In the commentary here, though, it says that when you are expounding the most profound view, you shouldn't ignore the lesser paths, but you should always still present the teachings on, for instance, karma as at the outset and so forth. Oh my gosh. In Patrul Rinpoche's, there's this wonderful book of Patrul Rinpoche's life, Enlightened Vagabond. I think it's called Enlightened Vagabond. And when Patrul Rinpoche went to receive some very profound teachings from a great yogi in Tromtar, who was a hermit, very famous hermit, who lived there, and Patrul Rinpoche and his disciple went to request and receive teachings from him. They were two great masters, and he agreed to give him this very deep teaching of this Longsaro Terma and great perfection. And so everything was laid out, and they went. It was just the three people, the Khenpo and Patrul Rinpoche, and then the master, Chögyam Ronpo. And they made all the formal requests and made offerings and so forth. And then the master just gave the first teaching, he gave one verse on precious human birth to Patrul Rinpoche. And then he started crying, and Patrul Rinpoche started crying. And they both sat there after just that one verse of teaching one of the shlokas of the precious human birth. And they both sat there crying for some time. And that was the first day of teaching. And then the second day of teaching, they went, and he gave another shloka of impermanence and how this precious opportunity is impermanent. And again, they both, the master and Patrul Rinpoche, both started crying, strongly crying. And the Khenpo who was with them, who recorded this, event. He just looked at these two great enlightened masters crying at this, just the mention of these four thoughts that turn the mind slogans. And he said he was just so astonished at that. It's just so astonishing. So even, so this. Then the last part of verse 90, he says, the rules of conduct you should not neglect. Even in this profound level, the rules of conduct shouldn't be neglected to be mentioned or practiced. Chokta Rinpoche, even teaching great perfection, always was four thoughts that turn the mind and conduct. As we know, Guru Rinpoche's famous quote of, my view is as vast as the sky, my actions are as fine as flower. So we should be, remember that. Anyway, these are admonitions for how to teach people, to draw them to the Dharma. We should be courageous in our view and humble in our conduct. And not lead, here it says, not mislead or lead people astray with teaching them that just sutras and mantras, just recite sutras and you'll attain enlightenment. If you just keep reciting like a sutra and you'll attain enlightenment, we shouldn't mislead people like that. Or if you just say mantras that you'll attain enlightenment, that won't liberate you. People should be taught the key points of how to practice. And a teacher should always read the audience, so to speak, read those who are you're teaching, and just even we ordinary people in our comings and goings, and people that we see, work people and so forth. If any opportunity we have to benefit people, then we should use it. But it all depends on the interconnection you have with other people as to whether or not your gift of Dharma, which is a form of generosity, will be received in the way that you intended to. So we have to be very, in some cases reticent, in some cases absolutely avoid, and in other cases you have to just see how much what kind of interdependence you have with someone before, how much they'll let you in to their boundaries or territory and will accept your what you understand of Dharma and so forth. And of course, it's your confidence that will carry the message, not the words. So if it's just you're repeating what you've heard, then it may be better to do the practice of noble silence in some situations. So anyway, that seems to be where we've gotten. That's not very, I was hoping to, hopes and fears. Okay, that's where we got. So please review, try to tease out how you can read this or that section or this or that verse and then look away and then contemplate that and carry that out and get very used to and familiar with the intention of that. What's the point of that? And then it gradually becomes naturalized. And that's how your bodhicitta will not degenerate. We say, where bodhicitta hasn't arisen, may it arise, and where it has arisen, may it not decline. So that's the context for these 2 chapters, is that how to avoid bodhicitta declining. So there, I'll end at that point. It's possible that the next time we'll finish this. It's all very, I thought we would, I've said that to myself previously, but anyway, I'll end for tonight here. All the virtue. Now you think you're first understand the value of merit, all of the patience, the logging in, the patience that took, the sitting, looking, and listening, overcoming any distractions and obstacles. All of that is your merit. The subject was the Dharma. And so anything that you absorbed or heard was your merit. And so, and you have the intention to study and contemplate and then put this into practice. That's your merit. So all the merit of that and all the merit that you've ever accumulated in the past, all the merit you will ever accumulate in all your lifetimes, and all the merit of all beings, enlightened beings, bodhisattvas, and ordinary beings. You roll that all together and feel as though it's extremely valuable, and then you feel as though you're giving it away, you're transferring it. You're transferring it into the mind stream of other beings. All the virtue of this practice and all that is gathered throughout the 3 times, I dedicate to all beings without exception, so that they may attain Buddhahood. Following and emulating the omniscient and courageous Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra, I completely dedicate all virtue. Since dedicating merit is praised as supreme by victorious ones of the 3 times, I completely dedicate these roots of virtue for the sake of practicing excellent conduct. May the teachings of Lord Buddha, the only source of benefit and happiness, long remain in this world. May the lives of those who uphold these teachings be as stable as a victory banner. Supreme Bodhicitta is so very precious. Where it has not yet arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but evermore grow and flourish.